Welcome back. It is now 7:21. Reviewed as an outspoken critic of the Army machine, Angela Ricketts' new book doesn't hold back on a reality many of us have never known.
This morning, Coffey joins the military wife and author with a personal look at her blunt and bold memoir that has a lot of people talking. Good morning, Craig.
Good morning, guys. That's right. Here's the book once again, No Man's War, Irreverent Confessions of an Infantry Wife. This is Angela Ricketts. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
She holds a undergraduate degree in sociology, right?
Mm-hmm.
Master's degree in social psychology.
Right,
and
human relations, yes.
Okay, and her husband is a colonel at North Command?
Yes, Northern Command.
Northern Command. Okay, so you're really in it. Okay,
yeah.
you know what you're talking about, and you've done this book now. This is kind of a tell-all book that talks about this culture, this real world in the military. We might not realize as civilians.
Right.
Right. And again, what's the reason why you did this book? Is it kind of therapy for you?
Yes, it was very, very cathartic, first of all. And secondly, there's a reason people wait like 30 or 40 years to write a memoir and discuss, certain difficult things to talk about. They wait till people are dead, or they wait until the storm has passed, and this storm is still going on. So it was really intense to write a book as it's still sort of unfolding.
Because you don't hold back.
No,
you
I don't.
You tell all, you give names, and you just go for it.
I changed names and I changed tiny little identifying characteristics.
Okay.
And what's really ironic to me is I did not. Some of the people who think that characters are based on them, it's not that person. So I've had a lot of a couple outraged folks.
Sure.
Who think that I'm talking about them. I'm not talking about them.
But this has already got back to Washington. People in Washington know people referred in this book.
Right.
Exactly.
That's right.
Okay. So especially here in this area, you want to pick this book up and check this out because you say this is written for the wives. And this is kind of a... it tells of your journey in the military, but it's also kind of a survival guide.
It is. And I wrote this wanting it to be my voice, and I've been so happy that so many of my Army sisters have come out of the woodwork and said, thank you for being our voice and my voice too. And this was, I lived this book too. This is not unique. The things that I went through and the things that I thought and had to say were not at all unique. And I didn't write this book for Army women. I wrote this book so that there's a lot in here that's not unique to being an Army wife. Okay. It's about being a wife. It's about being a mother. It's about being a friend.
Let's discuss deployment now. You say there's kind of a misconception when it comes to deployment. Your husband, in 22 years, was deployed 8 times.
Right.
Right? And what is that misunderstanding when it comes to what we think of deployment?
Misunderstanding, well... a deployment can be anything. It can be, in the beginning, in the 90s, they were small, and they were peacekeeping, and, except for Somalia and Desert Storm, the first Desert Storm. But through the 90s, they were peacekeeping missions. And then in 2001, when 9/11 happened, deployments slowly became longer and longer and more dangerous, and it was the same guys going back and forth over and over and over.
And it was always tough for you to say that goodbye. It's more like you were anticipating, even when your husband came back, you were already anticipating the next goodbye.
That's right. That's right. So you just kind of always stay in this hyper-vigilant mode of protecting yourself and protecting your family, and he was, we were just sort of always right on the edge of our seat.
Okay, well, speaking about deployment and the spouses being away, we'll talk more coming up next with Angela Ricketts here about this book. We'll talk about deployment, you back home, raising the kids. You say my kids. Not you and your husband. It's, they're my kids.
I said my house the other day, and he said, our house, our house.
We'll talk about that and the Kool-Aid that is the military culture. Okay, that's it for now. Again, No Man's War, Irreverent Confessions of an Infantry Wife, a must-read for sure, this tell-all book. That's it for now. Back to you guys in studio.
I like how she says she's doing it for the ladies and giving them a voice out there, Craig. That's very important. So, all right, thanks, buddy.
Welcome back. It is now 7:40. In her new book, Angela Ricketts pulls back the curtain on a military subculture some might know about, but many will never experience.
And Craig Coffey this morning continues our coverage live. This candid confession in a book about sisterhood, survival, and replacing stereotypes. Good morning, Craig.
That's exactly right. Good morning, Kimberly and Justin. Here is that book, No Man's War, Irreverent Confessions of an Infantry Wife. This is Angela Ricketts. Good morning to you.
Morning.
Military spouse and author. And tell us, why write this? And are there a lot of people that are too afraid to come out and say the things you're saying in this book, and why?
I I didn't realize that until I wrote it. I mean, I have always been pretty vocal about what I think about things and what I feel. So when I wrote this book, I didn't quite realize that I would be vocalizing things that other people were thinking as well. And I also don't think of it as a tell-all book. I think of it as my personal journey and my personal survival and buoyancy and the way that I got through.
But you reveal a lot about what goes on.
I do.
Yes,
I do.
that many civilians might not realize.
Right.
Yeah.
And, we all have a neighbor that we don't get along with or a boss who, irritates us. So there's just a lot of that that's relatable to everybody, I hope. And those personalities in the book, they were just bumps and obstacles along the way. They weren't the journey. They weren't the destination. They were just noise.
Okay. And why do you think it is that that people don't speak their mind about these things?
Because they're still in the fight. I think that most of my infantry sisters and my combat sisters, whose husbands are, senior officers still at war, they're still in the fight. We left early because I had a heart attack.
Brought on about the stress of
that's one theory.
That you think, being in this fight.
Right.
Okay, let's talk about that. The marriage, of course. Your husband's deployed a lot. You're raising the kids at home alone. What's the biggest struggle there?
The biggest struggle is probably trying to adjust our parenting styles to parenting together and then parenting singularly, because we're very different parents. We don't parent the same way at all. He's a lot more structured and strict than I am. I'm a lot more like, woo, everybody,
You often refer to the kids, though, as my kids.
I do.
Your kids, yeah.
I do. And that's just hard for me. I mean, everything to me it feels like it's, my home and my kids and my daughter. And so when he comes back, it's really hard for me to say our house, our things, our kids. And he always corrects me.
Quickly, what's the one tip or the biggest advice you can give to a military spouse out there right now?
Gird your loins and hold on, honey, because it's going to be a crazy ride.
Yeah, okay. We're going to have more coming up with Angela Ricketts. Again, the book right there, No Man's War, this just came out. Irreverent Confessions of an Infantry Wife. More of this this memoir, this survival guide, struggling, and we'll talk to her coming up in just a little bit. Back to you.
All right, good information. Thanks, Craig.
Yeah, so many wives here and our military members, they can definitely relate. Now is 8:16. Reviewed as an outspoken critic of the Army machine, Angela Ricketts' new book doesn't hold back on a reality many of us have never known.
And this morning, Craig Coffey joins the military wife and author with a personal look at her blunt and bold memoir that's got a lot of people talking. Good morning, Craig.
Good morning, guys. That's for sure. This is Angela Ricketts, and here's the book right there, No Man's War, Irreverent Confessions of an Infantry Wife. And this is pretty much her own story of struggling and survival in the military, being a military spouse. And you say it's not a tell-all, but you reveal a life in circumstances and situations that many of us don't really know about and understand. Almost like you said, there's kind of the Kool-Aid propaganda that goes on out of the public eye.
Right. And that Kool-Aid propaganda was something that we were we were all in react mode from like 2005 or whenever, 2003, whenever Iraq really, really got into it, and we still had Afghanistan going on. We were just all kind of reacting and trying to create these systems to keep us together and help our families and help everything. And we had tried to have an answer for things that we just didn't have an answer for yet. So that's what I call the Kool-Aid, is all of these, sort of terms that we had, reintegration.
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your background real quick.
Okay.
You're very educated. Your husband is a colonel in the Army, and you are from a military family.
Yes.
So you kind of knew what you were getting into.
Okay.
You wanted to, you said before you wanted to get out of that lifestyle, but then you just got drawn back into it.
Right. I went to a very liberal college, and I was kind of earthy, crunchy, and a little, I kind of thought I was counterculture and all that stuff. And then I met my husband and fell in love the second I saw him.
Who could resist him, right?
I know. He's so hot. So it was love at first sight. We didn't date very long. We got married very quickly, and then he went to Somalia. And I just didn't think about what he did. It was a life that I knew and loved. But you fall in love with who you fall in love with. So a lot of people have kind of said, you know what you're getting into. Well, no, I was a kid of the 70s and the 80s in the Army. My dad trained for the Cold War. He was also an infantry officer, and he was in Vietnam when I was born, but then it was all about the Cold War.
Okay.
So the 90s was when all the peacekeeping stuff happened, and then 9/11. So it's, you know, Army kind of goes in generations, and ours was a very different life.
Knowing what you know now in this life, that
Yes.
you've seen all facets of it, do you respect what your husband does? Do you?
Oh my God, yes. Oh yes, I respect him more than any. I could cry if I think about it, because he's so selfless and determined and relentless and all very driven, very focused.
Also, knowing what you know, what's the one thing that you think the military could do better and change as far as for families back home?
Well, now that it's all drawing down, I think there's a lot that we have to take care of with each other, and just a lot to kind of figure out. And it's just going to be OJT for all of us, and we're all. I think the Army did a really, really good job of taking care of us during all of that. I think they did the best that they could. A lot of people have been critical of the way the Army, you know, handled families, but, you know, none of us knew what was happening. None of us could see the future. None of us knew if this was going to end in a couple years. So I think we did the best we could. Okay,
check out the book. Again, she is Angela Ricketts. Here's the book, No Man's War, Irreverent Confessions of an Infantry Wife here. She tells a lot. She says a lot for sure, does not hold back at all.
I have big mouth.
Big mouth. We love it. That's it for now. We'll go ahead and toss it back to you in studio.
Two big mouths in our newsroom. Right by Trav, who's also a big mouth, too.
She fits right in, right?
Yeah,
we love it.
Perfect. All right. Hey, thanks all morning, Craig, for having her here on the show. We really appreciated her having her on.